Well, hello there. We're back. It's
Hi,
the
everyone.
Linda and Charlie show, or the Charlie and Linda show.
Good to be with you.
Yes, as always. All right. Well, you're probably wondering what it is that we're going to be talking about today. So I'll give you a hint. It starts with a G, it ends with a T, and there's two letters in between. Yeah, you're right. It's grit. Grit. So we're not talking about like the gravelly, dirty stuff. We're talking about the inner stuff. Grit it has to do with those inner qualities that enable us to really hang in there and move relentlessly towards our stated goal and intention, the fulfillment of our intention, even in the face of great odds or adversity or struggle or difficulty. It's that inner quality of I'm gonna do this. It's what athletes draw on when they're facing a big physical challenge. But it's not just about the physical challenges. It's about the mental challenges. It's about not just about our physical strength and the actions that we take, but grit is what it is within us that enables us to hang in there in the face of doubt, fear, challenges, ordeals, or obstacles. So what, you might ask, does that have to do with relationships? Well, if you've ever been in a relationship, particularly one that has any degree of value to you that you really want to sustain and improve, then you know that you will at times, and you do at times, need to call on some of those qualities within you in order to meet the challenges. And all relationships do have their challenges at times that are inherent in the process. And so we're going to talk about how you can grow grit, because grit isn't something that you naturally have. You may naturally have certain talents, but grit is what it is that enables you to do the practices that will develop those talents fully. So you don't get grit, you grow it. And we'll be talking a lot about that today, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if you're like me, you probably have great admiration for the people who have reached a high level of success in their chosen field. People who are terrific athletes, for instance, people who are accomplished and gifted artists, dancers, singers, painters, sculptors, and admiration for people who are very successful in business, people who are advanced spiritual practitioners. And so when we have admiration for these people, a secondary question that always comes up for me is, what sets those people apart from the people who are just moderately successful? And when I studied the subject more carefully and read Angela Duckworth's book about grit, I understood more deeply what the components are that make up grit, that enable the people who might start out with the same amount of talent. Maybe the people who aren't as successful maybe even had more talent, but they were lacking grit, so it didn't get developed as much. So it was really validating for me to understand that if you didn't have natural talent in a certain area, but you had passion for the area, that was going to be a place where you were going to devote time and attention. When you hit the inevitable obstacles that came up, and relationships are full of them from time to time, you're going to hit a rough place. And if you've got grit, you'll stay with it. You'll have the patience to hang in there. You'll have the resilience when you get thrown off the horse to get back on the horse. You'll have the courage to bring up the tough subjects, and you'll have the self-discipline to be able to learn good conflict management skills, good negotiation skills, good skills of all kind that will serve you well. So I think some people have natural talent for relationship. Other people don't have as much natural talent for relationship, but if you have grit, it can certainly compensate for it. So I found that very reassuring and enlivening and validating from what I had also observed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what some people do is they may not be highly skilled in relationships, whether it's for lack of natural talent or maybe just because they haven't really learned some of those skills, but they'll often try to find somebody who is more skilled than they are to kind of compensate for their lack of skill. But that doesn't necessarily always work, does it?
Well, I think it's a good rule of thumb that if you feel that you're deficient in grit, to see what the areas are that aren't strong for you. So one component of cultivating grit is to find people who are adept in the area that you want to become adept.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that might be mentors, therapists, teachers, coaches. So to have support from the people who are in the graduating class ahead of you is a good rule of thumb. Just to find somebody who's also brailing their way along and isn't as advanced, you might have the blind leading the blind there. So you both would need somebody that would help give you guidance.
Yeah, and I think that that's really the word, is getting guidance so that you can learn and develop yourself to become more competent in meeting the challenges of relationships, as opposed to finding somebody who's good at that and just sort of turning that responsibility over to them and letting them handle that, so that you don't have to do the work involved in getting up to being more skilled.
So that calls into focus one of the other components of grit, which is responsibility. Not expecting anybody to bring it to you on a tray, that you take full responsibility for becoming more proficient and skilled in whatever your area of desire is. And if that's in relationship, that you wouldn't expect your partner to do it for you, that you would read the books, go to the workshops, look inside, have the conversations, so that you were taking full responsibility for what was going to move you along the path to be more successful in relationship. Patience is another component that's very important, because to get highly skilled in any endeavor is going to take a while. I also want to mention another book that I love, in addition to Duckworth's book on grit, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell talks really succinctly about the 10,000 hours that it takes. You just have to put the labor in, whatever your chosen field, if it's business. He even talks about criminals who are the most successful criminals. They had to put the 10,000 hours in to be the astute, burglar or safecracker. And so whatever the area is, to have the focused attention and the endurance and the perseverance to stay with it. Not being distracted, not being spread so thin that you're not giving it your best attention.
Yeah. Patience is a big one, because make no mistakes that no matter how clear your intention is, it's going to take a number of repetitions to really integrate and develop the qualities that need to be developed in order to have more competence in your chosen field. Well, another thing that Gladwell talks, another example that he talks about is the Beatles, and how when they first got together and they were playing in small clubs. They needed to get as much experience, and they needed to get out there with the public and practice and put their skills out there and develop them as they could. And they were working several gigs and several sets a night for years. And Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours you got to put in. That's a somewhat arbitrary number. It doesn't mean that if you put 10,000 in, then that's going to put you at the level that you want to be at, because that is only one aspect of the process, and it doesn't guarantee you. Those who come into that process with a stronger commitment or with more experience or with a higher level of talent may be able to do it in fewer hours than other people do. But then again, there are other variables involved that have to be included in that process. So yeah, patience is definitely a big one, to be able to tolerate frustration, because you're going to need a number of repetitions in order to override some of the old habits of avoidance or of taking the path of least resistance that you have been used to taking. Most of us, given the choice, would prefer to take a path of lesser resistance than a path of greater resistance, where we may have to confront bigger challenges. Mm-hmm. So another one of the qualities that can be developed is the ability to experience strengthening those muscles, those psychic or mental muscles that you have not strengthened because you've been avoiding some of the challenges that are involved. And one of the big ones, in terms of relationships in particular, is your courage muscle. And there's a very simple answer to the question, well, how do you develop more courage? Because you don't just get courage, just like you don't get a lot of these qualities, but you have to grow them. And the way you grow courage is that when you're faced with a difficulty or a challenge that you're intimidated by, that feels daunting, that rather than withdraw from that challenge, you see this as a learning opportunity, whether you like learning opportunities or not. And, some of us are kind of tired of hearing the idea that, well, you should be grateful this is another learning opportunity. Well, thank you, but you know what? I'd rather do without it. But when you see that these learning opportunities are exactly what we need to practice with in order to develop more strength and more courage, then when one comes up, instead of having a sinking feeling like, oh, geez, now I got to go through this. Mm-hmm. That attitude is not going to help you in the process of becoming more gritty. So you want to meet that as best you can with the attitude of, well, this really is something I need to do, to practice with, in order to strengthen my courage muscle.
Mm-hmm. One of the qualities that composes grit is passion. That if we decide that we want to put ourselves fully into some endeavor, and we're about choosing to put time and attention and commitment, intentionality, focus on a relationship, you want to make sure that you have somebody that you feel passionate about. I sometimes refer to it as the magic factor. Do you know that some people look good on paper and they're financially fit and they're very attractive and they've got all the things that we think we want, but they might not have that hard to define, but we know it when we feel it, that we're passionate about this person, because the passion will keep us going, even if they're dull spots, even if they're boring spots, even if they're challenging spots. That will help to get us through. one of the other things that I think is so beautiful about grit and the people who are the grittiest is they know what has heart and meaning for them. And they choose those endeavors that they feel a sense of purpose and meaning. I believe that I derive a great deal of my sense of purpose by having a relationship that's exemplary for my kids, for my friends, for my students, for my clients, for my grandkids. And if you can choose that which will have a wider reach, do you know that it isn't just for you? The chances that you will be able to stay with it over the long term and find the courage and to get back on the horse when you get thrown off and to take responsibility and to not be distracted, you will find that that which has purpose and meaning for you and that which you feel passionate about is more likely to help you to stay on the path to the big success.
Yes, the big success. So what is it that defines success for you? What is the focus, the goal of your vision? Why are you doing this in the first place?
Right.
These are the kinds of questions that we've got to be willing to ask ourselves and to answer. You know, the why bother question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see all of these things are things that I really need to and want to develop. But towards what end? For what purpose? What is the intention that you have? And to really be focused and clear that that really is yours, that you own that that doesn't come from somebody else who's put that on you. It doesn't necessarily come from a culture that you are living in, whether it's a family culture or religious culture or a national culture. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to be clear, is this my vision? Do I own this? Is this something that is coming from my heart and soul, or is this something that has been assigned to me that I feel obliged to have to take on? And that's about self-trust.
So you mentioned the word vision, which is a very important and essential ingredient, one of the many components that makes up grit. Vision is related to creativity. So Charlie's talking about knowing ourselves well enough, know what lights us up enough so that we are living our life. We are living what is going to bring us a feeling of well-being. So that requires some inner looking, some mindfulness practice to notice what we're doing when we're the happiest and to have our life revolve around that as best we can, not to ever let somebody else put a script in our hand for how we're to live. Not our parents, not our religious organization, not our spouse.
Not to say that
it's an
they
influence.
They don't have a right to offer us that, or that there's no value in what they're offering. There could be tremendous value, but just to be really clear about whether or not this resonates within me. Is this something that I embrace also, that is really true for me, or is it something that I feel obliged to have to agree to?
Right, because to get to the highest levels of success, we need to own it. Do you know, like deep in our soul, this is the life I want to live. This is where I want to put my precious life energy. And I'm self-referential enough that I'm not going to live my life for the approval of anybody else. Mine is the most important. And when we hit the inevitable challenges, the tests, the pop quizzes, the finals that are going to see, are we going to go into the highest level of success in relationship or any of our endeavors, we need to know that we are choosing to put an action plan together with a vision for our life and keep modifying it. And of course, get input and feedback from the people in our life that we trust. But that is to help us clarify our life goals, to help us put the details and the specifics on our vision, and then to manifest it.
So what we're talking about here is authenticity, living an authentic life. And by the way, authentic has the same root as the word author. And author is this source, the creator, the owner of something. So do we own our true identity? Are we the author of our lives? Are we living authentically? Are we living in a way that is congruent with what is within us and who we are? It's about integrity, authenticity. And when we really are living from a commitment to express outwardly who we are inwardly, that not only enables us to more clearly identify what our vision is, but to really feel a commitment to embodying that in our lives. Makes it much harder for us not to act in ways that are supportive of that vision.
So I would like to thank you, Charlie, for making a commitment to live a life where you would reach high, know your talents, use them, and develop grit. And you have inspired me to also go for the gold and to develop the gritty part of myself. I feel like the successes that I have in my life in general, career successes and elsewhere, but particularly my relationship with you, because we made a contract around that.
Yeah.
That we were going to reach high, that we were going to let our vision be big, that we were going to keep co-creating an action plan that gave rise to feeling highly successful. And that gives my life a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose, that we can offer that to other people because we have lived it. We don't ever get complacent about it. And I know when I first met you, I was committed to more comfort and security model rather than the change and transformation model. And you were really a standard bearer for me. And you've given me ample opportunity, sometimes more than I really wanted, to reach down deep and find my gritty part of myself.
Wow. That really feels so good to take that in, Linda. Yeah, thank you for acknowledging me for that contribution to you. And of course, I know that you know, because I've told you, but I'll tell you again, that is something that goes both ways, that you've really supported and many times challenged me to press into some of my edges that I had not wanted to confront, particularly my resistance to experiencing the vulnerability that deep love really involves. Because that had been a real, just like you wanted to stay in your comfort zone, and I kind of, well, let's say encouraged you to press into that. And, you did the same thing with me in terms of the risks, the emotional risks in particular, that I needed to take in order to make this work. So thank you for that.
We took some turns. We took turns holding the standard of optimism. And I had a tendency towards pessimism, and Charlie would be a standard for possibilities. And there were times when he would have a ceiling on what he believed we could accomplish in terms of going for the gold in our relationship, and I would be the standard bearer. So one of the characteristics of the people who are really gritty is they don't let the inner cynic or the inner pessimist dominate them. They hold the optimism, and they think in possibilities. They think creatively. They affirm, we can do this. I don't know exactly how. We'll get our supports. We'll learn as we go. We'll use the Braille method of feeling our way along. We'll learn from our mistakes. We'll learn from the graduating class ahead of us, and we'll be successful ultimately. And we will celebrate those successes.
Yeah, and when you're in a relationship with somebody with whom you both share common vision,
Mm-hmm.
and you both see and are continually refining what the fulfillment of that vision would require, what it would look like, what it would feel like, and you're working together to support each other in ways that will up-level each of your abilities to be effective in doing that, then the difference in what's possible is exponential compared
Right.
to what's possible when one person is doing it alone. When you have a shared commitment in your partnership to support each other in doing your work that's going to forward your movement towards the fulfillment of the vision, then there's just no limit.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So
I want to just
we're encouraging the listening audience to reach high.
one of the when I was looking in the dictionary about the definition of grit, the synonym that they gave was one of the synonyms was pluck, which is a word that I don't use very much, but I looked that up, and what the dictionary said as a synonym for that was courage,
Mm-hmm.
Indomitable spirit.
Ooh,
Indomitable spirit.
that's potent.
And that's one of the things that's possible when two people align their shared intention, is that they literally become unstoppable. So that's what's possible when we take on the challenge of developing more of this spirit of this indomitable spirit.
Yeah, it takes us a ways. So we want to announce the topic for next week, and it's about resetting your happiness set point. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. All the best.